All right, come on around so you can see the map. So we portray the 3rd U.S., the regular army, as the same army that is fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq today, played an important part in our American Civil War. The regulars, as opposed to the volunteers, the troops from New York or Pennsylvania or other volunteers, the monuments you see here, the regulars were in the Army before the war. We'd been in New Mexico territory since 1848, the end of the Mexican War. In 1860, we were sent to Fort Clark in Texas. 5 of our companies went there, 3 went elsewhere. But when Texas seceded, of course, we couldn't remain in Texas. So we marched to the coast, boarded ships, and arrived in Washington, D.C. in time for the first Battle of Bull Run or Manassas. Now, that ended in defeat for the Union. The Union Army broke and ran. But a story you don't often hear is that at the end of the battle, the U.S. regulars formed a hollow square to ward off a cavalry charge by Jeb Stuart's Confederate cavalry. They bought time for the Union Army to continue with the withdrawal to Washington and made a situation that was bad, prevented it from becoming worse. So they went out from there to join the 2nd Division of the 5th Corps, Army of the Potomac, and there they would continue to serve throughout the war in all the major battles. The Peninsula Campaign, 2nd Manassas, 2nd Bull Run, Antietam, Fredericksburg, and Chancellorsville. They arrived here at Gettysburg on the 2nd of July, 1863 at 7 a.m. after having had only 3 hours of sleep. They marched into a position south of town and set up camp a few miles from Gettysburg. They were there until 1 o'clock when a development here at the battle called them forward to the battlefield. General Sickles had taken his 3rd Corps from this critical position at the base of Little Round Top and marched it out there to the peach orchard. So basically from the base of Little Round Top all the way out there to the peach orchard. That created a big hole in the end of the Union line. To plug that, they moved forward Caldwell's division of the 2nd Corps and put it in this position here. At 4 o'clock, at 1 o'clock, the regulars were called forward from the rear and posted at the base of Little Round Top. They were there for 3 hours, and then at 4 o'clock, General Longstreet launches his attack from Seminary Ridge. They march out across the fields and they strike the Round Tops and Devil's Den and the Peach Orchard and the Wheatfield here in the center. Now Caldwell's division holds off the Confederate attack for about an hour, but the men are beginning to run, they're running thin on ammunition, and the casualties are beginning to mount. And so the regulars are pushed forward from their position here at the base of Little Round Top, over the edge of the hill, through the Valley of Death, and up to the Wheatfield itself. Burbank's brigade in the lead, Day's brigade, including the 3rd U.S., in the 2nd line. Once they get up to the Wheatfield, then Caldwell's men begin to withdraw. The regulars are pushed into the Wheatfield itself. Barely do they get there when suddenly they begin receiving fire from Devil's Den on the left. The Confederates now hold that important position. Then they receive orders that they're to hold this position at all costs until the Union can put a new line in the rear. But before they can solidify that line, as Caldwell's men pull completely out of the Wheatfield, suddenly now the Confederates push forward. And worse, troops come in from the Peach Orchard. Barksdale's brigade comes in on their open right. Now they're almost surrounded. An officer in the 11th U.S. said, we were almost surrounded. It was a perfect shot, storm of shot and shell. But the regulars held firm. But the cost that they paid for doing so was tremendous. Burbank's brigade suffered 47% casualties. Almost half of the brigade was killed or wounded there in the Wheatfield. Day's brigade, even though it only played a supporting role here at the edge of the Wheatfield, suffered 25% casualties. 25%, a quarter of the brigade was killed or wounded. So the regulars bought time. The Union did establish this line, and of course the Confederates never made it farther than the center of the Wheatfield. They never broke the Union line, as was Longstreet's intention. You don't hear about the regulars' role here at Gettysburg for two reasons. One is that after the war, the volunteers went home. They returned to civilian life, they formed organizations that would come to be the Grand Army of the Republic, and they would eventually write their stories and share their heroic deeds here at Gettysburg. The regulars, on the other hand, were still in the Army. They went back out to the frontier to fight Indians, to escort wagon trains, to build roads and bridges, and to settle the frontier. So they never had a chance to write up all of their experiences. The other is that the volunteers were recruited from one particular area, and so they went back and formed those associations, but the regulars were recruited from all over the North, and so they never went back and established those ties at home. So as the story of the Civil War has been told, the role of the regulars has become more and more suppressed, pushed into the background by the justifiably important role that the volunteers have played. We're here to share that information with you today. Be happy to take any questions, but if not, I encourage you to go and talk to the sutler, talk to the ladies about civilian life, go and talk to some of the men in camp and learn more about their equipment and about the life of the average soldier. Welcome to the 3rd U.S.